You're listening to the Mangroves to Mountains podcast, where we talk all things outdoors, hunting, fishing, paddling, camping, adventure travel, and more. Thanks for listening.
Maybe not do that.
Yeah, maybe, can you wait a minute?
Yeah.
All right,
I'll just eat it.
yeah. It's not, he's warming up his food after the workout, get some.
I understand. That's important. That is important.
So what's that?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Ethan Rodrigue. Am I saying it right? Rodrigue?
Yeah, that's close enough, buddy. That's it.
All right.
I'll answer just about anything.
You can imagine how my name is butchered. It's Dusias, but the actual Greek pronunciation would be Dusius or Odusia. So my grandfather in his infinite wisdoms changed it from Ducia, which sounds a lot like something not so
Right.
pleasant, to Dusias. So yes, Dusias ever since. So
Size. That's a cool last name. I don't like that.
thank you. So how's it going there? Are you getting ready for deer season?
I am. Our season actually starts in 22 days, or excuse me, 50 days. And I'm actually leaving to go to Utah in 22 days. So,
Oh, cool. What's the Utah hunt?
elk hunt.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you've done that before, right?
Yeah. It actually started out as a PBS membership hunt with Craig Burris, and we've gotten to be good friends over the years. And this one in particular, there may be a PBS Utah hunt. I don't think it's an official PBS Utah hunt this year, but Rob Burnham and I are going to go out and hunt with Craig. So we're going to be in northern Utah here for about probably 9 days or so, and then come back and concentrate on whitetails. So that's the plan.
Excellent. That's a good plan. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I the first time I met your buddy Dalton Lewis, I'd hunted in Florida for many years.
Mhm.
Before that in New York. And it's not the New York most people think of. It's it's rolling hills, actually the northern extension of the Allegheny Mountains. And but when I hunted with Dalton, that was these guys, these mountain boys walk up and down these mountains like it's just nothing. And I'm just like, hold on, my shoelace is untied. Like I catch my breath. Plus I'm like 20 years older than him at least. So yeah.
You got to use the bino trick, man. When you want to rest, just pretend you're glassing something.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good one.
To be honest with you, man, everybody that I hunt and hike or whatever with, they always complain, my wife especially, always complain about how fast I walk.
Mm-hmm.
And Dalton walks fast.
He does.
Even for me, Dalton walks fast. So
He does.
I can imagine if somebody's not used to going up hills walking with him, it would be rough.
Yeah. So anyhow, so you got the elk hunt coming up, and then you got deer season. And how's the deer hunt looking there in Tennessee? You're in Tennessee, right?
I am. Depending on where you're at in Tennessee has a lot to do with the deer hunting. There's a lot of deer per square mile in much of Tennessee, but when the farther east you get, the lower the deer numbers get.
Really?
So
Okay.
yeah. So if I go, I don't know, 2 or 3 counties to the west of me and get into Middle Tennessee, and you can legally kill 3 does every day of the season.
Wow.
Like from opening day of bow season to the last day of rifle season.
Mm-hmm.
There's that many deer. It's all agriculture, rolling hills, that type of thing. But up here where I'm at, it's just all big timber, and it's something like 3 or 4 deer per square mile. So
Wow, that's really low.
It is. It's not uncommon to sit 3 or 4 days with not even daylight till dark, not see a deer. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds like Florida hunting.
yeah.
Boy, oh boy. Well, hunting in Florida, I mean, it's the same kind of thing. There's pockets of Florida. North Florida is actually a good deer density, but South Florida, where I hunted for the last 20 years, if I have an opportunity in the entire season, I'm thrilled.
Oh yeah.
But I could go up and hunt in the mountains of North Carolina and, have an opportunity or two in a weekend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah. It's just,
It's funny too, because, Dalton and I have talked about that before. One of the spots we've hunted together a couple of times, the western side of the mountain is Tennessee and the eastern side is North Carolina. And there's a huge difference. the management area on the North Carolina side, they actually put out crops, for deer, and they hold deer. So there's corn and whatnot. The western side, Tennessee doesn't do that. And, we've been on hunts and there's just a lot more deer right over the mountain,
That's crazy.
But it's funny how that all works out, just traveling just an hour or two, you can make a big difference. Difference.
For sure. So the Stick Boys podcast, that's your thing, right?
Yeah. Dalton,
among other things. Yeah. Dalton. Yeah.
Yeah. The kind of the way that all came about. I was on PBS Council several years ago, and but it was shortly after, or right before, actually, one of the banquets. I was rotating off a council, and Matt asked me if I would be interested in doing a podcast and let PBS sponsor it. And I thought, if I'm going to do that, I want to do it with somebody who's like-minded. And I mean, truthfully, as you know, you're not going to make any money doing a podcast. You're doing it because you enjoy doing it. So I wanted somebody to team up with like that. And Dalton and I had hunted together, and he and I are a lot alike in a lot of ways. He's a lot younger than me.
I'm sorry to hear that, but go on.
Well, in some ways, not all the ways. No, but yeah, we're just ate up with bow hunting, man. And we kind of had the same ideals and ideas. And, we didn't want it to be anything about gear or sponsorships or pro. We just want to talk bow hunting. That's it. So
I love it.
We always tell our guests, if they're new, look, we don't care what kind of arrow setup you have. We don't care how you shoot your traditional bow. Don't care. We don't even want to know what kind of bow you shoot. We just want to talk bow hunting. So that's what we do. And it's a lot of fun, and we enjoy it. So
it's doing very well.
Well, thank you.
It is, and it should be, because you guys are coming from the right point of view. I think the right direction, and I hope it continues, because it's really, really informative. The whole woodsmanship part, and then having these legends of traditional bow hunting is just incredible. When Dalton told me that you guys were having Ellen Altize around, I was like, are you shitting me? Like, really?
I know it's crazy too.
And then and many other guests too, but he's like a regular. So
yeah, he and Nathan and now Maribeth, they're all part of it now. And it's it's kind of funny. We joke, and it's like, we'll pay you the same thing we get paid, which is nothing. So we don't really have anything to offer, but you can come on and talk bow hunt with us.
Yeah, they're doing it for the right reason.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's cool because now we're all good friends, and we all of us are always talking all the time, and Dalton and I, when we have these guys on, I mean, we're just like everybody else, we're just like, wow, we'll just shut up and let you talk if you want to do that.
Yeah. Like the Wensels.
Oh yeah. It's funny. Both Gene and Barry, every time we've had them on separately, every time we're done, they're like, yeah, I probably should have let y'all talk more. And we're like, no, man, that's perfect. That's what we want.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yep. That's really cool. So the PBS, you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, man, I'm very, very dedicated to PBS. It's a fantastic organization. Probably late 90s. I had a very good friend of mine, Russell Lantier. He's from South Louisiana. He was good friends with my dad. He and I became great friends as well. And I was asking him some questions about PBS, and he bought my first year's membership. And everything he told me was 100% spot on. And I've said this many times before in our podcast, but PBS is something that if you try to explain it, and it's kind of difficult, but if you try to explain PBS to someone for an hour, it's you kind of get a vague idea what it is. But if you ever just go to a banquet or a membership hunt, or just get around a bunch of PBS guys, it's just instantly you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. I get that, and one of the stories I like to tell, and this is, I hear this over and over and over, but the first banquet I went to was in Nashville, and I'm in this hotel lobby, and I'm looking around, and there's like Don Thomas, TJ Conrads, and Monty Browning, and Gene and Barry, and I'm just like awestruck, right? Because I was the weird kid that, my dad brought home October Whitetails when the video came out when I was a kid, and I was just like, heck yeah, and I was stoked for it. All my buddies were like, who the heck are you? Who's Gene and Barry Wenzel? so these guys are like, man, I grew up watching these guys, and it was just,
Same here.
it's kind of awestruck. Like, I don't care about anybody famous, literally. I could care less. But these guys, I'm like, man, this is cool stuff. And then you get to talking to them, and they're just as excited to hear about a doe you shot or whatever as you are to hear about some Alaskan brown bear or Cape
Moose.
buffalo, a moose, And the best way I can think of to describe a PBS banquet, literally, Jim, is it's like a family reunion, except you like everybody there, And every banquet I've been involved with on council, it sounds funny, but the hotel staff always comment, they're like, man, y'all are the huggingest bunch of people we've ever met, and y'all are so easy to deal with. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're a bunch of bow hunters. It's not like we require a lot to be, comfortable and happy. We just kind of go with it. It's just a family reunion, they're fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one.
Oh man, it's great.
And I've only been on one. I went to the Georgia swamp salt marsh hunt. That was awesome. It was so much fun. And I knew a lot of the guys there, but I'm just a fairly new PBS member. But like you said, it's just like people feel like I've known them for years, and they're invited me to coming up to Pennsylvania to hunt, and just guys that I've known for just a couple days. And it's just such a great, the camaraderie is like, because they know you're like-minded folks, so it's almost instantaneous. It
is
just very encouraged by that. And
it's really cool. And something that's also interesting to me is I think most people in the PBS, the vast majority, as a rule, most of us are not really like joiners. You know what I mean? We're not like belong to this club and this club and this organization. It's just
that's a good point. Yeah.
But it's that, like you said, that like-mindedness, and I always say, if you go to any kind of function, whether it's a hunt or a banquet or whatever, if you don't get invited to half a dozen hunts, you're probably a jerk. Like, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So it's
that's why Dalton doesn't ever get invited on anything.
Well, we have exceptions. There are exceptions, but
sorry, buddy. I'm sure he's gonna watch this. Sorry, man. He'll cut me down tomorrow, probably in a more clever way. Maybe tonight. But
you might have a couple of days, man. He's coming back from I think they're in Pigeon. Him and Callie are in Pigeon Forge or something. So he'll probably be stressed out from traffic and everything for a few days. So you may have a little bit of a grace period there.
Does she let him drive?
I don't know. I hope not, because Clementine's with him, so surely not.
That's he's come down for many years hunting in Florida with me for pigs, and he's always it's funny, like he's such a good hunter, such a great guy, but he's such a good hunter. And but it's not just in Florida. When I come up, he always calls me like the lucky charm. When I come up, he always kills something, like a deer, or not that I'm I don't kill anything, by the way, but he's killed some of his biggest bucks when I've been out there just for a long weekend, coming up from Florida.
Yeah.
So I've gotten the invite many times over the years, and now I'm actually living in Raleigh, North Carolina. Yeah. So
that's cool.
Very excited about exploring some. Actually, Nick and I are going to go explore some public land not too far from here. So
very nice.
Yeah.
And North Carolina is a cool state. I enjoy
it really is
a lot.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
For fishing and hunting,
Yeah, for sure. I think personally, East Tennessee and North Carolina are probably my two favorite areas east of the Mississippi. I can honestly say, I've been a lot of places in North Carolina, and it's a beautiful state. I like it.
Let's talk about your bow making.
The bow making, yeah.
How long you been doing that?
Probably, I started about 2000, so I guess about 2022, or about 22 years now, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a funny story, but growing up, I bow hunted. I tell everybody, I honestly don't remember my first bow. My dad was a bow hunter, and I just always had bows around. And we shot compounds, and we shot traditional bows for fun, and we bow fished with them. And about the time I was in high school, maybe into my junior high era, something like that. My dad got to where all he hunted with was a compound and a muzzleloader all through rifle season. And, at that age, you kind of getting into sports and you're driving and you got friends and that sort of thing. And then joined the military and came home. And my dad he had gotten into making longbows, and he made not really hill style bows. It's kind of straight limb bows, little deflex in them. And he made me one, and I was like, man, this is really fun. This is a blast. One of these days, right? One of these days, I'm gonna pull the trigger and do this a lot.
And was that a laminated bow or was that a soft bow? Laminated.
No, it's laminated. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while, and he right about the time Bows of the Little Delta came out, I think it came out in '99. Anyways, Dad sent me a copy of that book, and I read it, and I was like, oh, that's it. I'm never gonna do anything but this, And it's an interesting story, Jim. But I called my dad. He was still in South Louisiana, and I was in Tennessee. And I said, hey, I want to build my own bow. What do I got to do? And he's like, man, you really need to come down. Let's build one. So we did that. And in the meantime, and at that time, Dad had never met Glen St Charles, and we have since, but before he passed away. But he just wrote a letter, and this is back before social media and internet and everything, really. So, he wrote Glenn a letter just saying how much he enjoyed the book and how he gave it to me, and it lit a fire and everything under me. And so I work all night, drive all the way down there. And I was actually laying on the couch trying to catch a little bit of sleep before he got home, because it was going to be like a marathon bow building session, right? And I remember the phone rang, and my mom answers the phone, and my wife, and she was on the other couch because we had driven all night. We were both taking naps, and I heard her say, "No, he'll be home after a while." Blah blah blah. Hung up, and she said, "Hey, when your dad gets home, he's got to call this guy back." And I was like, "Who was it?" She's like, "Some man named Glen St Charles." And I shut up, and I was like, "What?" She's like, "Some man named Glen St Charles." And
Oh,
like,
man.
What are you talking about, Mom? She's like, "I don't know." So I called Dad, and he started laughing at me. He's like, "Yeah, it's funny." I'm like, "No, I'm serious. He just called." And he just took it upon himself to look up through information and just called that night to say, "Hey, thanks for the letter. That was really cool." And we actually talked to him on the phone for, I don't know, probably 45 minutes, and we're just like, wow, man,
that's like a baseball fan talking to Babe Ruth.
I know. It was phenomenal, man. So, everybody, of course, loves Fred Bear and whatnot. He did so much for the sport, but Glen St Charles always holds a kind of a special spot for me. And there was actually several years after that, he was receiving an award at the Bowhunters Hall of Fame in Springfield, Missouri. And my friend Russell, who got me involved in PBS, he had known Glenn for several years and was friends with him, and we were all going to go up and meet Glenn. So we were all ecstatic, like we're going to get to meet Glen St Charles, right? And the weekend before, Russell called me, and he's like, "Hey, you're still going?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." He's like, "Well, you owe me for the rest of your life." I was like, "Why's that?" And he's like, "Well," he said, "Jay couldn't come, so Glenn's daughter was coming down. I believe her name was Carissa, and he's a little nervous about, Glenn was getting on up in age at that time. And he said he's a little nervous about staying in the hotel room by himself if he falls or something, he's like, so he wanted me to stay in the hotel room with him. I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." He's like, "But I can't do it because my wife's going." He's like, "So you're going to be rooming with them?" And I'm like, "What?" So I actually got to share a room with Glen St Charles, and it was funny because I was laying there at night, and it was like a joining room. And
did you sleep at all, or just
not much? Not much. I didn't want to be rude, but I just wanted to go in there like a little kid and just like sit on the floor and be like, "Man, tell me stories.
Yeah.
I'll listen to anything you want to say." So I really like I like history in general, but the bow hunting history it's just fantastic stuff, and there's so many people that don't know about bow hunting history, and it's always been around to a lot of the younger generation, they don't know the history of how people fought for bow seasons. It's just always been there. And I think it's easy to take for granted if you don't know that history.
And learning the history, you appreciate modern bow hunting that much more. When you, just like reading a book about something and then like reading a book from your hero, like, Glen St Charles, and then you get to meet him, and like you appreciate it so much more. But the more you know about the past of your sport or whatever you're into, the more I think you're into it so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. If you really dive into it, man, it's almost, turn of the century, there was, of course, Will and Morris Thompson, and
yes,
a little later you had Ishii, and I mean that was all just chance, Art Young and Saxton Pope, that was pretty much just a chance thing, right? I mean, there was Will Compton and Art Young were friends, and there were a few people around the country that dealt in archery, but a lot of that stuff, if you look back, it's almost like divine intervention, because
Yeah.
I mean, you consider too, at the turn of the century, most people didn't really hunt for pleasure. It's just what
Right.
you did to get food, right? So if you're
Right.
hunting for food, why would you shoot a bow and arrow? Because it's not like you're out there, even though they may have enjoyed it, they weren't out there necessarily to have a good time. They were trying to do something, and obviously firearms are much more efficient. But just the fact of
There was something deeper, a deeper
Yeah.
connection.
Absolutely. And I think it's easy to identify with that, and I think everybody kind of has that in them, whether they acknowledge it or foster it or whatever. It's just,
Yeah.
how do you not like the flight of an arrow? I mean,
Yeah. Especially a traditional bow where the arrow's slower and you can actually see the arrow, as opposed to a compound or a crossbow, and just like laser beam, you don't really enjoy the arc.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too with them, and I don't have anything against compounds.
No, me either.
At all. I think there's a lot of people that don't have the time or the desire or the drive to commit as much time as it takes to be proficient with a traditional bow. So I get it. But with the traditional bow, you take so much of the mechanical stuff out of it, and it's just all on you, and it's just magical. It's kind of hard to explain without sounding like a cliche, but it's really true.
It is. I think it was in the one of your recent episodes, you were talking about the connection between, or the commonality between fly fishing and traditional archery. And I don't know if Dalton told you, I worked at Bass Pro Shops next to the IGFA, the Fishing Hall of Fame. It's literally right next door in Dania Beach, Florida. So there were guys coming in like, Roland Martin. There was these big names. Let's see. I was going to say Fred Bear. No, well, he was a fly fisherman.
He was.
Lefty Cray, like Lefty Cray would come in. Let's see. Billy Pate, like especially saltwater anglers, these famous fly fishermen. And I was just like awestruck. And when I first started working there, and a colleague of mine at the shop said, Jim, they're just fishermen like you. They may be famous, they may have written a book, they may have written some articles, but you're a good fisherman too. We're just cut from the same cloth. Like don't be like. And then Chico Fernandez is one of the other ones. And ever since that day, I was like, then when I've met famous bow hunters, not a lot of them, but some are famous people in any field really. And it's like, they're just like into the same stuff we are. They just happen to get some notoriety from what they did for whatever reason.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's just not sure where I'm going with that, but I'm just trying to draw parallels between the two sports, and fly fishing just personally has always come far easier to me than traditional bow hunting. Probably because I have TP, also known as toilet paper, but I'm fighting it real hard. I actually have in another week, I have a coach that's going to work with me here locally. So, I've been shooting a bow for 45 years, but, just it can creep in and creep out. And right now it's crept in on me. And, so I'm working on it. I'm blind bale shooting. I'm getting advice from everyone I know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work through it.
It's funny. I don't play golf, but I think that there's probably a lot of parallels in shooting a bow and golf, because there's so many little things that you have to do correctly. And my advice to when guys come out and they're shooting a little bit, or if I make them a bow or something, is I'll tell them, if when you start shooting, some days you're just going to shoot like crap, right?
Yeah.
Just stop shooting, because you're doing something wrong. You just don't know what it is. And I heard somebody say once, every time you shoot, you're either reinforcing a good habit or a bad habit.
That's a good point.
So if you're not doing something right, just set it down and walk away from it. But I do think that nowadays there's so many more resources for guys who are wanting to shoot, and you can knock a lot of time off that learning curve to shoot proficiently. And that's great. That's a great thing. I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope because you have a lot of newer people coming into it, and they learn that way. It's the proper way and everything else. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that people who don't do it like that are doing it wrong. It's just a different way of doing it, and um, the Wilhelm brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So, one of those brothers had a shoulder injury from the war, and this was in the 19 teens, I believe. And he couldn't lift his shoulder, so he drew his bow to the center of his chest. Man, they would literally shoot like fruit off each other's heads.
I've seen those videos.
It's crazy.
Cigarettes out of these beautiful, like models' mouth, like.
Yeah. There's the one. I think one of the brothers is like cleaning a frying pan or something, and the other brother shoots an arrow into the frying pan as he's cleaning it from like 80 yards away on top of a bluff. And it's like, man, who does that? The point being, you can, he drew the center of his chest, so you can. As long as you do it consistently, man, you can get accurate with it.
Yeah.
Now, how you choose to do it might be a little easier or a lot harder to become accurate, but there's other ways to do it. And I do still think that, target shooting is great. Dalton made a post that was an excellent post, in my opinion, about introducing pressure and putting value on shots. And that's all great. But at the end of the day, and he said as much in the post, at the end of the day, man, to become a good bow hunter, you need practice. You gotta let arrows fly at critters, and it takes a while.
Yeah.
Usually, most of us mere mortals, it takes a while, anyways.
Yeah.
There's some exceptions to that, but I wasn't one. But.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that was great about living in Florida, we have so many small game seasons in particular, but also wild hogs where you can hunt them year round. So I even though I struggled with that, but I still killed a lot of stuff, could get close to pigs, shot a lot of raccoons, shot a lot of squirrels, rabbits. So a lot of game under my belt, but it's been 5 years since I killed a deer with a bow and arrow. I like deer meat, so my son and I have been rifle hunting. I'm really into black powder. I killed a buck up in with Dalton last fall. So
I'm
not strictly a bow hunter. I'm I love deer meat, love venison, love to feed the family. So certainly not above just taking a rifle out or whatever I need to do.
Sure.
I prefer black powder, of course, but not of course. I mean, the rifles are cool too. My son Nick's really into rifles. I like the tradition of a round ball and patch. I don't know about you if you do that too, but it's just cool. It's close range. It's similar to bow hunting. It's probably the closest thing to bow hunting that and hunting beyond a rifle. I mean beyond a stick bow or compound.
For sure. I don't think I've ever killed anything with a muzzleloader. I've only muzzleloaded a few times, and honestly, that's something that I would really love to do. That just seems phenomenally fun to me. But I'm kind of weird in that when it comes time, I'm like, nah, I don't want to go in the woods without my bow. I hear a lot of guys talk about they don't want to bow hunt during rifle season because, well, what if I see an animal and it's 60 yards? I'm kind of the opposite. I'm like, I don't want to go with a muzzleloader because if I got a shot at a good buck at 15 yards, I'm gonna really wish I had my bow.
Yeah,
I've actually toyed around with the idea of getting a really small caliber muzzleloader, or something like the Kentucky long rifles, just to hunt squirrels with. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. You don't want to shoot one with a 50 cal, but
no,
32 maybe.
Yeah. I think that's cool, and it's a lot similar, or a lot of similarities rather, to traditional bow hunting in that it just takes a lot of time. You have to have a lot of dedication to you can't just pick it up out of a box and go. You've got to put some effort into it.
You do.
And
work up loads and get the grains right, and the patch size, and there's a learning curve to it for sure.
A lot of factors, and I'm just I guess I've got one of those personalities that I just like stuff like that, stuff that's kind of hard. I just, for whatever reason, it's probably not a smart thing and probably doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just what I like.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about your military background? Were you Army or?
I was I did 4 years in the Navy. I was
Navy. Okay.
Yeah, I was a gunner's mate, and I grew up loving to shoot, and I still own a lot of guns. I I shot so much in those 4 years. That's all we did. To me, it's kind of odd, I guess, but a bow.
It's quieter for one thing.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's why I can't hear.
Yeah.
I got my wife tells me I need hearing aids all the time, and I'm 47. But to me, I get the appreciation for firearms, but a gun's a tool to me, like 100% a tool. I don't care. I don't care what it looks like. I don't just don't care. I'd honestly probably have to sit and really think if you asked for what guns I owned, I'd have to probably really think about it because I just never shoot them. But like I said, I shot so much. I don't know, kind of over it,
You're over it. I can see that.
We shot and cleaned guns and moved ammunition. That's pretty much all we did. But I got to see a lot of the world. We got deployed in '97 and went to Africa. And that's kind of a funny story too, that's related to bow hunting. Bill Dunn used to own Zipper bows and grizzly broadheads. He and I had been friends for several years. And we were at the Tennessee Classic one year, just shooting the bull. And this is probably 3 or 4 years after we got to know each other. And I think I've told this story before, but he mentioned he was in the Marine Corps. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I was in the Navy. It's like, do you ever spend any time with any expeditionary units? And he's like, yeah, we was with the 27th MEU. And I was like, well, that's interesting. We had the 27th MEU on a ship I was on. And I said, do you ever go on any deployments or spend any time on the ships? And he's like, yeah, we went to Africa in '97 to Sierra Leone.
Oh my God.
I was like, wait. I said, you were on that deployment? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you were on the Kearsarge. He's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, I was too. And we didn't even know it. We didn't know each other then, and here it is at that time, like 10 years later. And we'd been friends for several years. And we were on the same deployment on the same ship. So it's
that's
kind of interesting
incredible
story.
Small world.
It is a very small world, but yeah, you get to see quite a bit of it. You get to go a lot of places you don't really want to go, but you're always It's funny, Jim, my daughter and son-in-law, and both my daughters, my son-in-law and my youngest daughter's boyfriend and grandkids, they all went to Florida. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and nothing bad towards Florida. I talked to Don Davis today. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh yeah. Same here.
Yeah. But,
he's been a guest actually on the show.
Yeah. Don's a cool dude. We actually talked today, but I hope I never see the ocean again, except for when I'm planning on going snook fishing with Don. And other than that, I don't really
should do that.
I'm going to.
I hear you. Yeah.
But right before that trip, it was going to be a family trip. And my daughters came up to me and they're like, Dad, we were thinking if asking you to go to Florida, that's not really fair. That's not really your thing. And that's like you asking us if we want to go on a backcountry hunt or something. And if you don't want to go, and I'm thinking, what's the catch, right? And it's like, and if you don't go, we don't have to board the dogs. I'm like, so you want me to not go to a family vacation on a beach so you don't have to board the dogs? They're like, yeah. And I was like, done. Absolutely done. Cool. So I stayed home and watched the dogs. And
really,
they went to the beach, and my son-in-law brought us back some speckled trout and some snapper. So that's a good deal in my book. So.
Yeah, man. Let's talk a little about Little Mountain bows.
Yeah. So I started. So I'm a machinist by trade, and maybe that's part of it. But for a lot of years, I built bows, and they were fine. I killed a lot of stuff with them, a lot of critters, but people would say, well, build me a bow. And I'm like, they're okay. They're just not quite, if I could tweak this in or tweak that in, get the finish a little better. And after many, many years, I finally got to the point where I'm comfortable with the way they draw and the way they shoot and the finish and everything. So we had a few people ask me to build them some. So my plan was to just build 10 or 12 a year, just kind of get a little hunt money on the side. It's a hobby. Don't have to pay for the materials if someone's paying for the materials, so I can build them a bow and that type of thing. And it's kind of evolved into that. I have zero, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to do it for a living.
Gotcha.
I think anybody that complains about the price of a custom bow, I can promise you they've never built.
Oh my gosh. I've always said, I can't believe they're as cheap as they are. Not cheap, but I mean, like they should be.
Yeah.
You,
lot.
you think about like a compound bow, it's built on a machine. It's,
Yeah.
as opposed to something that's built by hand. It's truly one of a kind thing. Like, I can't believe that they don't cost far more. I'm
Well,
always astounded by how inexpensive they are compared to what they actually should cost.
yeah, or think of like a custom rifle, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. And another thing I'll point out for all my friends who build bows for a living, I will say this too: if when you see a guy that's made a bow and you're like, oh, that's really cool, how much does it cost to build the bow? And I'm like, well, the materials cost this, but I've probably built 20 bows tweaking this out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the forms and the finishes, and it's a very long, expensive process. And I think to build a bow, like to get a kit and build a glass bow, it's really not as difficult as probably a lot of people think. Where it starts to get difficult.
I hate that woman's voice.
I do too. She sounds mean.
Yeah. Like my second grade teacher, Miss Davidson. It actually may be her from the grave.
Maybe
Sorry.
so.
Ethan, what were
No, so yeah, she's probably collaborating with some of my old teachers as well. But
could be.
no, but getting back to building bows, I think that to build a bow, if somebody just wants to, order a Bingham's kit or whatever and build a bow, it's probably not as difficult as what you think. But all the little tricks and things you learn along the way, and then when you get into making a bow smoother and the fancy inlays and overlays and nice finishes, that stuff takes a little time. But it's just, one of the cool things about the traditional bow hunting community is the same exact type of thing with bowyers. You can call somebody that you've never met before that they build bows, and I've done it. I've had people message me and it's like, hey, how do you do this? And they'll absolutely tell you everything you want to know. It's Tom Jenkins from Zipper Bows, Norm Johnson from Blacktail Bows. Those guys are very good friends of mine. I can call either one of them up at any time and say, how are you doing this? And they'll by all means tell you. Michael Arnett, it's all times.
Yeah, it's not like you have to Google and like,
right.
How do you do this? I just call to
Exactly.
some of the leaders of the industry.
I've never spoken to a bowyer who ever, not only do they not withhold information, they went way out of their way to explain it in detail. It's just, it's a cool community. It really is.
It is for sure.
So,
and how's it going so far with the bow sales? And
I got a lot more on the bill list than I anticipated having. I
had a feeling. They're beautiful, really, really pretty bows.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You just build in recurves, or not just? I mean, I'm a recurve guy, so.
Yeah, I built longbows for a long time. I like recurves better. They fit me better.
Same here.
So that's what I build now. I've got a couple longbow designs that my old longbow design. It was pretty mild reflex deflex. I got something kind of kicking around in my head I'd like to play around with, and I've built 1 or 2 3-piece longbows, but I've built a few over the years more than that. But here lately. But I haven't just got anything that when I made them, I'm like, oh yeah, I like this. I'm just, it's not really tripped my trigger yet. So I'm kind of playing around with that. But at the same time, I really don't have that much time. I can't really keep up with bows I got to build now. So probably just stick to that. Like I said, I'm not trying to by any means do this for a living. It's just it's a hobby. And it's, after 20 years, I'm like, well, maybe I'll start getting some hunt money by making a few bows for people and that type of thing. So
that's right. Yeah, I sell some flies on the side and through Etsy, and I have it's called Everglades Flies, and it just basically pays for the supplies to tie the flies to sell.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit more, but
I've seen some of your work, and my fly tying is nowhere near on par with that, but I tie a few flies too, and that's I enjoy tying them, but I don't tie for the heck of it. It's like if I'm going fishing, I'll enjoy it, but just to sit and tie, I got to kind of get in the mood, and then I'll do a bunch at one time.
It's funny, when I have a trip for myself, like coming up, or I guide too. So client trip coming up in a couple of days, I'll always try, tie fresh flies. I have a box of 500 flies, deer divers, what have you. But I want fresh flies for tomorrow. Like, like a
Yeah, I
live,
can see that.
live bait. I don't know what it is. It's like, it gets me in the mood. Like, just, your broadheads are super sharp. They're crazy sharp. Guess what? Tomorrow's the hunt. I'm going to touch them up.
Got to. You got to. It'd be rude not to, right?
It's all part of the process. And both sports are process oriented, and they attract people like us. And like you said earlier, people are so disconnected from nature and from their, this is esoteric, but we're all hunters, we're all fishermen, we're all gatherers, we all evolved from that, or whatever you say, however you want to say it, God's plan. But we're all part of that. We're all part of it. And so some people fight it more than others. We just it came natural to us.
Absolutely.
And we're just going with the flow. So
yeah, I heard somebody say once that whether you are an anti-hunter or not, your ancestors excelled at it. That's why you're here.
That's why you're here.
If they hadn't excelled at it, you wouldn't have that option.
Exactly. That's great. Great way to put it.
But yeah, it's I always look at fly fishing like and traditional bow hunting, and I'm sure you've had this a lot more than myself, but especially guiding. But guys are like, "Wow, I'd love to fly fish." And the first thing I always ask myself is, are they the kind of person that just they've got to go out and catch a bunch of fish to have a good time? Because if you're that kind of person, you're probably not going to enjoy fly fishing.
Yeah, I've always said about traditional bow hunting, I may as well be a member of PETA, because they kill just as many animals as I do.
Tell you what, man, there's time
without the attitude, right?
Yeah.
It's like
it's so humbling too. Every time you get on the road, man, I have a really good season and get a lot of critters in the fridge and the freezer, and I'm like, man, I'm getting good at this. And then the next year you get kicked in the feet, it's
the second you think you're, pretty good. Yeah. Guess what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And, you mentioned Florida earlier too. And probably the most intelligent thing I've ever heard anyone say about whitetail hunting. And I think it was Gene Winsel. I believe it was Gene. And come November, he said, how you hunt big deer is nowhere near as important as where you hunt big deer.
Yes.
And I remember, Biggie Hoffman wrote an article in PBS magazine several years ago. And he had talked about that, and he said he had a lot of friends in the Midwest and Iowa and Kansas, and they wouldn't shoot a buck unless it was 140 inches. And if they hunted really hard and really smart, they might get 2 opportunities a year. But you have that same mindset in somewhere like Florida or Georgia or most of the Southeast, you're more than likely you will never fire an arrow in your entire life, ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's all kind of relative. And
it is.
We mentioned Don Davis earlier. Some of the bucks Don's killed in Florida, he's a bad cat. I guarantee you he's a bad cat. And a lot of people from Iowa, whatever, look at those deer and be like, that's, it's a good sized basket rack. It's like, no, you don't understand. That is huge.
A whole different ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've never hunted blacktail. I really, really want to hunt blacktail. But I think one of the things that intrigues me so much about that is when I hear people talk about hunting coastal blacktails and the way they hunt them, and they're like ghosts, and you'll get pictures, but you never see them in the daylight, and vegetation so thick and the terrain so rugged. It's like, man, that's what it's like hunting here, right? That's what it's like.
Yeah, exactly.
And you watch stuff in the Midwest, and I'm not trying to sound jealous, but I'm jealous. You watch that stuff, and you see these big mature deer cutting across cornfields, in the middle of the day. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this. I actually lived in Iowa for 4 years.
I didn't know that.
Central Iowa. Yeah. And I killed a deer every year, one or two. Let's see. I killed 6 deer with a bow in 4 years, but I've never been like, don't get me wrong. If a big deer was in range, I was shooting at it, but
right.
If a deer came, I'm more or less just a meat hunter. So, basket rack comes by, that's what I was shooting. But I did miss a couple really, really big bucks.
Yeah.
And rattled in some giants in central Iowa and South Iowa.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I taught school in near Greenfield, Iowa. Mm-hmm. And the kids would fight over, Mr. D, do you want to come hunt our farm? Like,
Oh, that must have been terrible.
yeah, it was just awful. Not only that, but I tell people this, they probably don't believe me, but from my art room, I could glass the fields that I was going to hunt as soon as it got out in October, November.
Really?
Yeah, an hour later, like look at the clock. Like,
Oh, wow.
there's a buck chasing does. Not exaggerating, buck chasing does out there, and I'm going to be on that property as soon as school lets out, and just
Wow.
never killed a giant. Like I said, I had a couple shots at some, saw many incredible deer. You know, I killed a doe that was probably bigger body size than any buck in North Carolina. I mean,
Yeah.
incredible. Its head is like a horse. I shot it with a
Right.
muzzleloader, and killed some deer with bow and arrow. Just delicious deer, you know, I mean, corn fed. So yeah, it was good times for sure.
Dude, I would have been worthless at work if I could see that. Knowing I'd have been like, I'm just gonna hang it up now because I'm not gonna be productive.
Yeah. And it's funny because Iowa was known as like a big whitetail, of course, big whitetail state, but at the time, it's 20 years ago, there were not many bow hunters, and
Yeah.
there were bow hunters coming in from other places, but the locals were not bow hunters. They're mostly shotgun hunters, and the gun season didn't open until December. So that's why they get big, right? It's post rut, right? They're not running around chasing does during gun season, so they don't get shot. The big bucks pretty much out there where I was, they're pretty much killed on drives, you know, just by chance, you know, kids like, oh, look, there's a deer with antlers, shoot it. And then it's like 170, you know, like, there's a deer, like,
Yeah,
so
I think
it's all
that's-
relative, like you were saying.
I agree, 100% relative, and I think that, you know, growing up in the South, and you know, you get to go elk hunting and stuff like that. Sometimes it's like, oh, this is so amazing, it's so cool. But honestly, and don't get me wrong, I hope I never have to stop taking trips like that. But the more stuff like that I hunt, the more I appreciate whitetails. Which seems kind of backwards, but they're just
Same here.
man. They're
The
just,
ultimate.
yeah, absolutely. I think if they weren't so wide, if everyone didn't have access to whitetail hunting, they would be a lot higher regard. They would be held
That's
in
a
a lot higher
really,
regard.
really well put. Yeah.
They're just, man, they're amazing animals, you know, and I don't know, I don't think anything compares to them. I mean, they're just
Anywhere.
amazing. Yeah,
Anywhere.
They're just amazing. Super cool animals.
I have to assume, is elk your favorite game animal or whitetails? I'm looking at my nerdy notes here.
I'm going to say whitetails.
Whitetails. Yeah, same here.
Bear are really, really cool. I've only been able to, I mean, we have a bear season here, but we can't bait. So our bear season is, you're hoping a bear happens to walk by, right? You can't really target or pattern them the way they are here. They're constantly moving. You can get trail cam pictures of a bear and from the day before, and you're looking at the pictures thinking, hell, he might be 10 miles away by now, you know?
Yeah.
But I've been on a couple of bear hunts where, you know, baited situations and whatnot. And just, I think if I showed up for a bear hunt and the airlines lost my bow, I would be okay. Like, I'm still going to go sit in the stand and watch them because they're just really, really cool.
Yeah.
But I think we've got some bear around here and they're really cool. Now where Dalton lives, they're ate up with bear.
Yes.
It's not cool.
Not cool.
They get into everything, you know. They're like little 10-year-old boys running around breaking stuff. But if, you know, as long as your population isn't so high that they're causing problems, bear are just really, really cool animals. But I don't think anything can compare to a whitetail, and especially the mountain whitetails. They're just, when you're kind of like, you know, like we said, you're like hunting a ghost, you know.
Yeah. The odds are against you, but yeah.
But it's fun though. I mean, it's all part of the challenge, and I think the older I get, the more I enjoy the chess match of everything, you know. And I'm like you know, we talked about Glen St Charles earlier. I remember reading one day, it may have been in Bo's Little Delta. He said he's a trophy hunter unless something else comes along, you know. And I like horns as much as the next guy, but
Yeah. I saw this is a little bit off topic, but I had something just pop up in my Google feed yesterday. It was Johnny Cash on his first moose hunt.
Yeah.
and in Newfoundland. He shot it. He went up there, and there's an iconic photo of him. He's in jeans, like covered in dirt and blood. He's got a Bowie knife on his hip. He's got a rifle. They even said what it was. It was a Mannlicher. I'm not sure. It was like a World War II era rifle with a scope, and he's on a walkie-talkie, but like a Bakelite, like this giant thing with a huge antenna.
Right.
Because he had just killed his first moose. It was a 600-pound cow moose. The first moose he saw within 20 minutes of setting out on his hunt. So he's radioing his friend, I think Merle Haggard or something.
Oh, wow.
I could be completely wrong. Another country artist. And it's just like I'll send you the picture. It's like so cool. It's like, this is like the epitome of, how many Hollywood, not Hollywood, how many music stars today would like post that, not that he posted it, but it just happened. And the cool thing about it was like, yeah, I went out hunting. It was my dream hunt. I'm going to do a tour in Newfoundland only to hunt moose.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Can I hunt moose there? And then he did some concerts around Newfoundland and shot this moose. And it was just the first moose he saw. It was like 600-pound cow.
Yeah.
And 20 minutes out of camp. And he doing it for all the right reasons, and a super cool photo.
So on the off chance you actually needed a reason to like Johnny Cash more, there you go.
Exactly.
Right?
There you go.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
You want to talk about your favorite hunt? You have a favorite hunting story or just a memorable one?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Sorry to put you on the spot here. I do this to everybody.
You're fine. Probably I got a couple that come to mind.
Yeah, go for it.
There was one hunt in particular where my dad and I on public land, we both took deer the same night with bows that we each made, respectively. It was a late night because we were back pretty far, and it was a Sunday night. I had to work the next day at like 5 in the morning, so it was a late night. But that was a good hunt, and
well worth it though.
It was a really cool hunt. And then I think I've told this one on the
no go back into that one. Go back into that one.
This is actually
I want to hear more about that.
So well, the one with me and Dad.
Yeah.
Oh, so he and I were hunting. There was a waterfowl refuge that, of course, you couldn't hunt the waterfowl refuge, or actually you could up to a certain date, and we were getting really close to that date. So but we were on the edge of the waterfowl refuge and edge of on the management area, and I'd heard him shoot. And there was a lot of backwater. This is in West Tennessee, so it's real swampy. And I'd heard him shoot and heard a deer run off, and I thought I heard it fall. He wasn't too far from me, but the deer kind of ran towards my direction. And I remember looking at my watch, and I was like, man, we got about 15 minutes of daylight left. I know we shot that deer. We're a long way from the truck. It's, we're in like knee-high water. This is going to be a long night. I'm like, I better go ahead and get down. And as I was putting my stuff up, I heard some deer coming up. And I was like, what's really going to suck if we got to deal with 2 deer? But I'm like, we'll worry about that after.
Yeah.
And I shot one, and then he walked over to me, and as I was getting by, it was probably 3 minutes, maybe 3 minutes left of legal shooting light when I shot her. So she ran off, and I was still sitting in the tree, and it was completely dark. And he comes walking up, he knew roughly where I was, and he whistles. And I'm like, oh gosh, be quiet. So I kind of hushed in a low hushed voice. I'm like, shh, and he walks up and he's like, what are you doing? We got to get this deer. I'm like, man, be quiet. I got a deer down right there. So anyways, that was a good night. And it was, I think my nieces were actually visiting from Louisiana at the time too. So that was really cool. We got
both of them, recovered both.
Yeah, we recovered both, and we got back, and my daughters were little, and my nieces were pretty little at the time too. So we got pictures of all of the kids, that was a cool night. And then another story I think is pretty funny, and I think I've told this one on the podcast before, but it was the first animal I'd ever killed with a bow that I'd made. And it was a little spike, and it looked like he was going to be a forkhorn, but he busted out. He had like 2 little balls on the end of his antlers, right? And I was watching a couple does, and there was a hunt next to a slough, and this deer came by. And long story short, I made a good shot, arrow buried, just I could barely see the knock as it ran off, and knew it was a good shot. And it was pretty open, just kind of hardwood bottoms, you know,
Mhm.
and the deer ran probably 40 yards, right? And then he fell. I'm like, you know, that's awesome. Finally killed something with a bow that I made. I put the arrow back in the quiver, you know, my backup arrow, and I'm watching him. Well, the deer gets up and he's obviously hurting, but you know, he's walking off, bumping in the trees and whatnot. He goes another 10 or 15 yards and he just stops. So, and I could kind of pretty well see him, and he's facing away from him, and he's just standing there, man. He's like not moving. I'm like, man, that's something's weird, you know. So I get my binoculars out, and I watched that deer in my binoculars for probably 5 minutes, and he's motionless. I'm like, man, something's not right. And this was a long time ago, long before cameras or cell phones, not cameras, but cell phone and stuff. So I ease down in my climber and I knock an arrow, and I start like slowly stalking my way to this deer, you know, and I'm getting closer and closer, and I could see most of the deer, see his rear end anyways. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how cool I am because I'm getting so close to this deer, and I'm going to do a follow-up shot. When I got about 20 yards from him, I was trying to ease around a little bit to get a better angle, and I realized that he was actually dead. But there was just a vine coming off a big sweet gum tree. And when the deer died, he kind of sort of slumped onto that tree, but that vine was like under his chest. So he wasn't standing perfectly straight, but he was just about perfectly straight. But I'm like just about ready to start drawing on this deer, and I'm like, his head's down. Why is his head down? And I realized it was dead. So
Oh my gosh.
I had to
Sorry.
I had to cut the vine to get the deer down. So that would have been a funny one to have a camera along for a picture. 'Cause I thought I was really doing something, man, you know, and sure enough, it was.
What are your plans for filming this year? Any? Dalton,
Yeah.
Dalton's all over you, but you got to film.
Yeah. When we first started doing this, he was like, man, you got to start filming. I'm like, dude, that's not me. I'm not filming. He's like, no, you got to film. And the first time I ever took a camera into the woods in my life, I killed a turkey, and during turkey season. I was like, man, there's nothing to this. This is easy, right? Well, like 4 or 5 animals later, I remembered to turn the record button on.
Oh gosh.
Like the next animal it was on a PBS hunt actually at Land Between the Lakes, and this little buck come up, and I had it filmed, and I framed it perfectly, man. It was like, oh, this is gonna be perfect. I'm gonna wait till he gets right there, and I shot him, and the deer ran off, and I filmed it. I thought, you know, and the deer fell, and I was like, God, it's so awesome, right? And Dalton's like, you know, you got to explain what just happened to the camera. And I turned the camera, and I was like, crap, I didn't even turn the camera on.
Oh,
so I've done that a bunch. So it is a challenge, but
we've all been there. We've all done that.
But it is fun, you know. And he told me, he said, you stick with it, man. You'll start enjoying it. And I didn't believe him, but it's true.
Yeah. You got one on camera last year, right? The doe.
I did. I got that one
really
on
cool.
camera. I think it was last year, maybe year before. And I got a couple turkey on camera. And I always think I do a good job, and then I go back and watch the footage, and I'm like, man, it kind of sucks, you know. But I got some good footage this year from a good turkey I killed, and got it sent to Dalton. But by the time I got it to him, the turkey season was kind of ending, so I think he's going to save it for next year. But that was the blind was a little bit small. I was hunting with a buddy, so we weren't able to use the tripod, so he was actually like filming around the side of my head, holding the camera out, you know. And that was actually
you got to do
what you got to do. And that was actually a funny story too, I'll tell you, because I shot this turkey, and he was really close when I shot, but he kind of turned right when I shot. So I got his vitals, and I got the offside drumstick, but I didn't get the front drumstick.
Mm-hmm.
So he pitches and flies into it. So now he's back in the tree line, and he's like 8 feet from the blind, and he's standing on one leg, kind of wobbling, right? And I'm hunting with this guy. He's a younger guy, and he's like, man, and he loves turkey hunt, but he never bow hunted turkey. And he's like, you want me to run him down? I'm like, man, he's gonna die. It's just, let's see if he'll
leave him.
You know, but I couldn't shoot. He was behind a bunch of little small young maples, so I didn't have another shot. And he's like, you want me to run him down? I'm like, just hang on, man. And they're hard to find if they walk off, you know. And he's wobbling on one leg, and I was like, I don't think he's going anywhere. And he's like, well, you want me to run him down? And I looked at him, and I was like, do you think you can catch him? And he like looks at me with like this sincerity of an apostle. And he's like, total eye contact. And he goes, without a doubt. Yeah. He's like, without a doubt. And the whole time I could hear the blind zipper on the door, like going zip, 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 zip. So I started to say, well, if you think you can, let's go after him. And I was like, well, and he was gone, man. I mean, he's By the time I got out of the blind, dude, they were like 30 yards away, and the bird was trying to fly, could fly, but he was trying to fly off. And luckily I shot completely through the bird. But when they'll fly sometimes right before they die, they just kind of sort of flop on their back, right? He was like in the process of doing that, and my buddy was literally stretched out and wide, and like winning Super Bowl touchdown catch, flops out and tackles the bird. And
Awesome.
I was laughing, and he comes back, and he was out of breath, and he's like, "Man, I was going to die before I let that bird get away." And I was like, "Dude, did you think about that broadhead being in that bird?" He's like, "No, I didn't." I'm like, "Well, it wasn't. Luckily it wasn't, but it was a good hunt."
Oh, you shooting an expandable that back then, right?
No, no expandables for this guy. No, I was with the day 6.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I've expandables were kind of starting to come out about the time.
Sorry, I even took that way.
Those are no, that's okay. That's fine.
Brutal, stupid. They're awful.
Yeah, they are.
Know.
Yeah, they are. I tell you, speaking of that, I don't know what the expandables are like now, but I used to do bow hunter ed classes, and you're not supposed to like give recommendations when you do that. But if someone asks your opinion, you can do that. So one of the things we used to do, and again, full disclosure, this was, I don't know how they're different, 15 years ago from where they are now. We would take a pipe clamp or a piece of pipe, put a piece of deer hide over it with a pipe clamp, as scientific as this sounds.
Right.
We would put that on a bathroom scale, and we had a little short arrow shaft with a wooden handle, and we would use a needle point, a cut on contact, tanto point, a 3-blade, a chisel point, and a mechanical. And you would actually you could push that arrowhead through that deer hide, and you could look at the bathroom scale and see how many pounds it took, and the needle point would go through with like a pound, just slice through it. And the tanto point might be 2 pounds. The chisel point might be like 8 pounds.
Like a muzzy.
Yeah, like the old muzzy or thunderheads or something like that.
Yeah.
But man, those mechanical heads at that time anyways, man, I'm not kidding you. That scale would pop out at like 40, 50 pounds before it would go through, and we would use that as an example. It's like, I can't tell you what to hunt with, but I know which one of these I wouldn't hunt with, but broadhead designs, you can only remarket that so many times. So I guess that's why they're around, but I guess that's a rabbit hole we probably should.
We could go down.
They're junk.
They're junk. Bottom line, they're junk. Yeah. And even like the what is it? The hunt. What is it? Hunt public hunt.
The YouTube guys.
Yeah, the YouTube guys.
Yeah.
Even they're. I mean, most of the popular for lack of a better term, the YouTube hunters, they're all going to fixed blades. I mean, pretty much. I mean, compared to expandable, right?
Yeah, and it's ironic too because
oh shit, like we discovered
Turns out a heavy cut on contact arrow broadhead combination is really good.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it, right?
FOC, heavy FOC, and it's amazing. Like only 40 years after the curve.
Right.
To the trend.
And you still see it like on these outdoor channels. I don't watch that stuff, but
me either.
When you do catch a video on a commercial or at a buddy's house or whatever, you see the arrow hit a deer, a whitetail.
Right.
Out of like an 80-pound compound, and it gets like 6 inches of penetration. It's like, dude, what's up with that, man? It's
pathetic.
Marketing, I guess, but
yeah,
part of it.
So PBS Council, you're running, right?
Yeah. So Matt Schuster talked to me a while back.
I'll edit all that out of that. Okay, clap.
Woo!
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Ethan, PBS Council, you're running, right?
Yes, yeah. I was asked to run for vice president. I served as councilman a few years ago, and with the podcast, I felt like I could dedicate more time to that with doing the podcast as opposed to the council position. But it's been a while now, and I'm looking forward to that. And the cool thing about PBS, and this is probably going to sound like I don't know, I hate to say the word political, but everybody always says when they're running for council, it's like, honestly, it doesn't matter who wins, right? Because the caliber of people that are always running, it's like it's a no-lose situation. So, I may even vote for Sean Bleakley for vice president. I'm not sure yet. But,
That'd be
yes.
awesome. He may vote for you. I don't know. I know Sean very well.
He might.
may.
He might. So, but Sean's a great guy.
Yes.
And the caliber of people in PBS is just mind-boggling.
Top notch people.
Absolutely. So either way it goes, PBS will be in good hands. We got our next banquet's going to be in Lexington, Kentucky. So that'll be pretty close for most everybody to drive to.
Yep.
So that'll be a good one.
And when is that? When is that one?
That is, so the banquets are every other year. They're always in March. So I don't know the exact date, but I guess it'll be 2024. Yeah, we're in August, so 2024. It'll be in March. Typically it's around the second or third, like around the 15th or so. I'm not sure exact, but it's always a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Officially, most folks start getting there like Wednesday or Thursday. It's a good time, man. I encourage anybody to go. The only thing I can say about a PBS banquet that could be interpreted as negative is if you ever go to one, you're probably never going to miss another one. This is just be another thing. You're going to be like, well, that's somewhere else I got to go.
Yes, sir. I get it.
they're a blast though. And it's just another Glen St Charles story. My buddy Russell told me the first banquet he ever went to was kind of the same thing. He's kind of awestruck. All these guys have been reading their books and following their adventures and print and stuff. And, he didn't know anybody in PBS at the time. And he said he was sitting down at the lounge and kind of looking around the room thinking, wow, there's some serious
heavy hitters.
Yeah. Heavy hitters. Exactly. And as he's looking around, Glen St Charles walks up and he's like, hey, can I sit here? And he's like, yes, sir, you sure can, and it's just that kind of camaraderie, it's
there's not many things like that, in this day and age,
it is not,
egoless, check your ego at the door. If they don't have to, because they don't have one.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So it's a phenomenal group, and it's kind of organization that, anything that you're going to get out of it, what you put into it, if you join PBS and get your magazines and pretty much the end of it, that's probably, your results might be a little different than if you actually show up for some events and, try to go on some of these hunts. And a lot of the membership hunts we have, I think PBS has had membership hunts for black bear in Alaska, blacktail, elk, turkey, I believe coos deer, javelina, hogs, whitetails, I mean, you name it. And, the way that works is if someone decides they want to have a hunt, they'll determine I can accommodate 5 people, 10 people, whatever. And the first X number of people that say, I want to go, you're in, you just show up, buy a license. And that's huge, especially on an elk hunt. Cause if you've never been, it's a little bit intimidating, and, the best advice that I've ever heard someone give about elk hunting is if you're going to go elk hunting, go pick an area and go. And the next time you go to that area. And the next time you go to that area. And eventually you'll learn it and you'll figure it out. Whereas on one of these hunts, you're showing up and there's at least one guy, probably several, that have hunted there before. And they're like, okay, here's what the elk tend to do. And they, go out.
They're going to share. They're going to share with you.
Absolutely. And you're going to have lifelong friends. So I wouldn't have any reservations whatsoever about going on a PBS hunt with guys I had never met before. I would have no reservations just showing up, because within minutes you're going to be lifelong friends. So what I was saying is, I wouldn't have any reservations about going on a hunt, a PBS membership hunt if I didn't know anybody that was going to be there. It wouldn't matter, because literally within a couple minutes you're going to have friends that, lifelong friends, and it's like the guys all your life, because everybody's just kind of cut from the same cloth.
For sure.
So,
yeah.
So
what's next for you? Deer season?
Deer's, well, elk. Like
elk,
I said,
elk first,
and then deer, and then we'll be going back up north. Nathan Killen and myself and Craig Phelps, Ryan Galitsky, and we're going to be heading back up to Ohio. I think last week of October. We're going to be going up there, and then just local stuff around here. There's they've opened up they expanded the bear season, and there's a really, really good black bear that I've been seeing every once in a while. And now I can actually fire an arrow at him during bow season. He's never been in bow range, but maybe he'll show up. He's
Yeah,
a pretty
nice.
good-sized bear. But like I said, bear season here is kind of a hope and a dream kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But
It's always
yeah,
one of my dream hunts for sure is bear. But yeah. Oh,
They're-
good luck
they're
with
just-
that. Hope
yeah.
he shows up for you.
I do too. I'm not holding out much hope, but you know, we're and then actually may do an exploratory trip a little south of me for bear. My son-in-law and I or my son-in-law and I were talking about I've heard some good things about a specific area I want to go check out, and if it works, I'd really like to do a PBS membership hunt there for bear.
Oh, wow.
I've heard some really good things about this area. It's a huge area. Supposed to have a lot of bear in there, and it's not in Tennessee, but
That's enough. That's enough. You know.
non-resident hunting licenses are not that bad.
Okay, good.
Hopefully, we'll get time to go down there maybe in October and check that out. It would be big enough area to accommodate pretty good sized group of guys.
That'd be
So,
super cool.
Yeah, hopefully that'll work out. So yeah, other than that, man, it's just keeping up with the young grandbabies now, and
Yeah.
watching my girls get bigger and more grown every day, and enjoying life.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is that for
Oh,
sure.
Ethan Rodrigue, appreciate it so much, buddy.
Hey, buddy, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we should have asked you long ago.
Oh, we'll be around. There's a lot of other
Really
cool
fun.
people out. There's a lot cooler people out there to talk to than me.
I don't know
but
about that.
I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Same here, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully
All
we
right.
can hunt together one day.
Yeah. I hope so.
We're not that far apart.
We're not now. We're
I
not.
was almost heading over for spaghetti last night, you know. It's
Yeah,
only
that was
like
funny.
5 hours.
I polished the rest of that off today. It's funny. My wife, they had
Yeah.
open house at school last night.
Inside joke.
Yeah, inside joke. But they had open house at school last night, so my wife was like, "I'm gonna be late." I'm like, "That's okay. Mom fixed us up, so you don't have to cook when you get home." And
I get it, man. It's awesome. Thanks so much, man.
hey, buddy, thank
Thanks,
you,
Ethan.
man, and
Take care.
good luck this season.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Take care.